Welcome back to the second episode of Live Support with me. This support is for those who would like to change negative implicit childhood memories using the Remmert Method. And we've created this particular free forum for those who've either watched our YouTube videos or read our book and need personal help with using the techniques to get changes, but aren't in a position to do one-to-one sessions. So if you're new to the Remmert Method, be sure to check out the links in the description of this post. But here are a few of the main points in a nutshell. So thoughts are connections between neurons in the neocortex of the brain. Those connections between neurons trigger matching chemicals. So negative thoughts trigger stress chemicals and like adrenaline and cortisol, and positive thoughts trigger feel-good chemicals like endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin. Implicit or unconscious childhood memories provide the evidence that proves our self-image and worldview. In turn, our self-image and worldview provide the foundation for our unconscious decisions and actions. And those memories can be changed to the opposite, positive, and empowering. So if you'd like help changing your negative implicit childhood memories, please check the description of this post for the details. And so for today, the questions we have today, so you can submit your questions anonymously, or you can ask for help in the room and I can take you through it. So today we have 2 anonymous questions and then 1 question from the group that I'm going to answer that someone posted in the group. So the first topic is feeling impatient about getting results. And the second one is intrusive thoughts and agoraphobia, and then the final one is hidden trauma. Okay, so answering the first. So the first question is, how do I deal with impatience about wanting these techniques to work and manifest positively in my life immediately? Roughly how long after you began practicing these techniques did it take for you to start to see significant positive results in your life? So thank you so much for that question, and well done for reaching out for the answer for this. So there's 4 points to the answer to this question. The first point, and very importantly, is understanding and reminding yourself that these changes that we're making, so we think of self-development as kind of intangible, but the changes you're making to yourself are physical. So you're actually making physical changes to your brain. And you'll have noticed that most physical changes take some time and it varies. So, hair takes time to grow, nails take time to grow, muscles take time to get stronger. And when we are doing, for example, when you want to get physically fit, you can't just kind of go for a few runs and then you're physically fit. It's a process, and it depends on so many different factors per person. So just like getting physically fit or learning a physical skill, like playing an instrument, learning to ride a bicycle, anything like that, the changes you're making to yourself are physical changes in your brain. So you're changing the structure of your brain, you're changing physical networks of neurons, and this all takes time. In addition to that, of course, when you're changing something that goes against the norm, what's always been, the unconscious part of your brain is constantly trying to correct course. So you're dealing with that as well. So reminding yourself that if you wanted to run, for example, if you have never run before, if you've never done any physical exercise before, getting straight off the couch and running, it's going to take a while before your body is able to build that stamina and your muscles are able to develop enough for you to run for any period of time without getting out of breath. So in other words, for you to start to see those little positive changes. So you won't feel fit after the first few goes. Now, if for someone else, let's say instead you actually have been walking for a while, you are active, you just haven't done any running, well, then it's going to take less time for your brain and body for your body to develop that fitness. In addition to that, it's also going to depend on what else is going on in your life and your body and your brain at the time. So if you are not getting enough sleep for some reason, things are going to take longer to make, changes are going to take longer, both in the example of physical fitness, learning a skill like playing an instrument, and self-development. If you're going through a stressful time, or you've got a deadline, or you're dealing with a difficult relationship, or you are, you've got any other kind of circumstances in your life that you're dealing with, those all impact any kind of changes you're making to your life. So keep reassuring yourself that just because you're not seeing the changes you're looking for right now doesn't mean nothing's happening. So things are happening behind the scenes. Your brain is changing physically in the background, just like you can't see your hair growing. You can't see your muscles getting stronger when you do, let's say you're lifting weights. It's when you are not doing the lifting that your muscles are actually repairing and getting stronger. So, and again, it takes a period of time. So that's the first point. The second point is to be aware of the limiting belief. And this one, I can't tell you how familiar I am with this one. This was probably the biggest impactful limiting belief I had. And that is the limiting belief of, if I do the right things, someone or something outside of me will reward me with the results. And, this can come, this is very, I think, common in the belief of the law of attraction, or the idea of the law of attraction. If I visualize, then the universe will give me the results. If I do the right things, the results will happen for me. That can be a very limiting belief, and coming from childhood. So if I'm good, I won't be punished, or if I'm good, I will be rewarded. And what it does is it puts the power outside of you. So you are doing what you can, you're trying to do it right, but the result comes from outside of you and is beyond your control. So you're at the mercy of something outside of yourself. Compared to the more empowering mindset of, I create the results. And if I, for example, still can't play that piece of music that I've been practicing, it's not that it doesn't mean I can't play it or I never will play it. It's just that I may need more practice, or I may need to reach out for help with that particular piece or the techniques. So, and if, for example, I'm doing the weightlifting and I'm not getting the results in my muscles that I want, it may mean that it's just taking longer, or maybe I need different nutrition, or maybe I need to find a personal trainer who can help me get specific, overcome those specific challenges. So in the same way, not seeing the results you want yet doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't working. It may mean that your brain needs more time to process and assimilate the changes, or it may mean you need more practice to develop the skill of controlling your chemical state in the moment. Or it may mean that there are negative childhood memories that are still there, maintaining whatever you're experiencing currently. So that's the second point. The third point is that the experience of impatience in itself may be a program. So to check on that, ask yourself, what's wrong with something taking longer? And or what's what's wrong with it taking longer than you want it to take, or what's the worst thing about it, something taking a long time, or that kind of thing. Because there may be a fear that it won't happen at all, or it may be a pressure like, oh, but it's not going to happen in time for something. So identify what the problem is with the results not having happened yet, and then ask yourself, how does that feel? And then, where in your childhood did you feel that feeling? Remember, it may be a different topic, but it'll be the same feeling. And then whatever those memories are, change those, practice the new ones, and establish them. And then finally, to answer the question, how long it took for me to experience results, Again, it's going to depend on what kind of results you're looking for. So for me, my biggest challenge when I first started changing childhood memories was finances. So I was in debt, and a lot of you know all of that already from the book. So for me, I think it was about, now I'd already been practicing the superpower. So the little brain chemistry exercise and the unconditional love, I had already developed that technique, or that skill. So I was already doing that myself. So I had a little bit of a step up there. And then from the point of changing the first negative childhood memories that I changed, it was about a week after that I noticed that I was thinking differently. So I woke up one morning thinking in a way that I hadn't thought before. And it was also things that would have been obvious to other people, but I just had never, my brain didn't work that way. So that was kind of the beginning. Now, that didn't mean that money suddenly manifested for me, or my bank account suddenly had money in it magically, obviously. But it was a change in my automatic thinking and a perspective that was different. And so then over the next couple of months, gradually different changes. But very, very importantly, it's not a straight line. So no improvement, whether it's physical fitness, learning a skill, or self-development, goes in a straight line up. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. So in the same way, if you start running, you start you want to get fit and you start running, some days you'll feel fantastic and you'll run, and then other days suddenly, for no apparent reason, you'll feel like, oh, I'm so tired, I can barely, and you feel like you're dragging yourself along. That's part of the development. And in the same way, for me, there were some days when I felt fantastic and things seemed to be going brilliantly. And there were other days when I would lose income. So there was, income was supposed to be coming, and it didn't for whatever reason. And that was when it was important to hold steady. So I practiced the superpower, practiced the new memories. And then it turned out just as well that didn't happen because something better came along. So it's not buying into those down times. So and finally, also intentionally looking for the improvements. So there are certain things that we want, certain results that we want, and that's why we're doing this work. And while we may not see that yet, there may be little things that can help encourage. So using the analogy or the similarity of running a marathon, of the running. So you want to run a marathon, but between sitting on the couch and running the marathon, in a week or two, you may start to feel, oh yeah, I'm not as tired as I used to be. Or, oh yeah, I'm not getting as out of breath. That kind of thing. I still can't run a marathon, but there's little things that I may not have noticed without setting that intention. And Steve, yes, Steve would like to chime in with a question. Over to you.
Yeah, your last point kind of spoke to what I was going to point out, or I wanted you to kind of address that phenomenon that happens, that when things start to change, that we may have like habitual energy, or there may be a habitual pattern there of always focusing on the negative, or we're used to focusing on the negative. So I know that I, in speaking with one of my one-to-one clients, we recognized that there was a significant shift that happened, and that her mind had already moved on to looking for something else negative. So, and I know that pattern for myself, and I think that you've experienced or witnessed that with me, that a shift can happen, and it is like, well, I never really had that problem to begin with, and now you're already focusing on the negative thing. So I know there's a name for that phenomenon. I can't remember what it is, but it is that once we have a shift occur,
mm-hmm.
our mind is kind of playing tricks with us. It's like, well, I never really had that problem to begin with.
Well, yeah. And what that is the brain is, so the brain automatically is looking for the next problem to solve. So we go, okay, there's this problem. Once we have solved a particular problem, the brain gets used to the new thing and goes, okay, so I don't need to pay attention to that anymore. That's not a life-threatening thing. Now, where's the next thing? And that's why there's this thing of, never satisfied. We go, oh, well, you get that, and then you want something else, and then you want something else. Well, yeah, because that's the way the human brain is designed, and that's for survival. So it's natural, it's automatic, and it takes conscious awareness to deal with it. So for example, somebody may say, oh, I really need a new place to live because, for whatever reason. So that's the urgency. Then they get a new place to live and it's lovely, but then they go, oh, but it doesn't have this and it's not that. And that's not because there's anything wrong with them or they're dissatisfied or selfish people or anything like that. It's just that their brain is automatically going, okay, what's next? What's next? Because you've got that expansive thing of let's build, let's develop, let's grow. So yes, absolutely. That's a natural thing. And where my sister and I came, well, it was actually my sister and her ex-husband that came up with this of, oh, I don't do that anymore. So starting to notice the things that you don't do anymore that you aren't aware of. So thanks, Steve. That was a good.
Yeah, and I was just going to plug, doing some journaling or keeping a notebook or kind of recording the wins as they're happening, because oftentimes when we get into that place of a slump or something, it's like, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? And it's like having a record that, no, it actually is working.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Thank you for that. All right. And so the next question is, yes, so here's the next one, is also anonymous. Intrusive thoughts. So this person says, I'm chronically ill, but have panic disorder all my life. I developed semi-agoraphobia. My biggest problem is being scared to drive because I have crazy thoughts of crashing on purpose, etc. So I won't drive or go out like I used to. I could use some help, please. So I'm so glad that you reached out for help. Good job. And so I think two main things I want to point out here. So the first thing is to recognize that the feelings of panic that you're feeling in the moment are not about the current experiences. So of course, they'll be coming from childhood. And the order in which this is happening is the unconscious part of your brain is triggering that panic state first. So it's triggering the stress chemicals that cause those sensations of panic before you are consciously aware of it. Your body then you feel the sensations of it, and then your conscious mind is becoming aware that that's what you're feeling, and then it's assigning meaning to it, looking at what's in front of you. So the idea of getting in the car or whatever else is going on. So that's that piece. So what you want to do is find the childhood memories that are creating that, triggering that, and change those. The reason it's so strong and seemingly impossible to change is because the stress chemicals that are creating that panic state, the stress chemicals that are being produced in those moments are the same chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol that would be produced if you were in physical danger. So that's why panic attacks feel so intense and they feel like you're going to die, not because there's reason, not because you are going to die, but because those are the same chemicals that would be produced if you were going to die. So it's a chemical state. So asking yourself, when you're not in that state, so don't do this when you are feeling panicked, of course. Asking yourself, when you think about the idea of driving, or when those panic attacks happen, that feeling that you feel when you're in the middle of it, where in your childhood did you feel that same feeling? So, and it may not be to do with the same topics, it may be something else. Go with the first thing that pops into your head. And then, of course, change those childhood memories. For those who are new, we will put the links to changing childhood memories and all the techniques and exercises in the description or comments of this post. So address those, bring the stress chemicals down and change those to the opposite, positive, empowering. You want to end up with a timeline of your childhood where you were safe and loved, you felt safe and loved, and so that you've got that strong foundation. So that's what you're aiming at there. In the meantime, also practice the little technique, the little brain chemistry technique. Again, I'll put the link in the description or comments of this post. Practice that again when you're not triggered. So when you're not feeling those triggered emotions, practice it like you would practice running before the marathon. So don't wait for the marathon to run, and you wouldn't wait for the night of a concert to practice an instrument. So practice that little exercise, that little brain chemistry exercise. It's so short, it's under 2 minutes. Practice it whenever you can, especially last thing at night before you go to sleep, first thing in the morning when you wake up, and then whenever you can throughout the day. Tie it in with something you're already doing, because that's the easiest way to remember it and to make sure you do it as much as possible. So whenever you make a cup of coffee, or whenever you go to the bathroom, or whenever you brush your teeth, so tie it in, so because you don't have to sit and close your eyes to do it. You can close your eyes to begin with, just to get to get the sense of it, but then do it while you're doing other things. Keeping yourself topped up with those feel-good chemicals that are created by doing that exercise will help to keep the stress chemicals down that are creating that panic attack. But make sure you're changing those childhood memories as well. And then finally, in the moment, when you are, and in fact, do it again before you get into that situation where you're feeling the panic. I would say, first of all, give yourself permission to not drive. So tell yourself, it's okay, I don't have to drive. All right. So because then you're not creating that tug of war or that conflict within yourself. It's okay not to drive. You may drive eventually, but for the moment, just take that pressure off yourself. And bear in mind that it is the child in you that is feeling that fear, that panic. So those feelings of panic and the feelings of crashing intentionally, that kind of thing, that's coming from the child in you. And so reassure that child. So imagine you've got this little child with you, and imagine giving them a hug and telling them, okay, it's all right. Just as you would if you had a real child with you who was frightened. Think about how you would reassure them. So, a child who's frightened of the dark, for example. So they're in bed, they're frightened of the dark. You don't want to go in, climb into bed with them and be frightened with them and go, oh, I know it's terrible and there's monsters under the bed. You want to go, it's okay, sweetie, there's all right. Look, there's nothing here. You're okay. I'm with you. That's the way to speak to yourself when you start to feel these symptoms, but also do it before you feel the symptoms, so that you are setting it up, you're pre-paving. All right, so I think that's what I have for you for now. Start with that and see how you go. And of course, put your name on the list again to go further. Okay, anything else you need. All right, and if you have questions or anything doesn't make sense or something's not working for you, let me know and I can take you further with that. All right, and then the final question for today. So this came from a post in the or comment in the Facebook group. So thank you for this. Matt Hunter says, do you discuss developmental trauma? He says, I mean the subtle kind that leaves trauma but with no memories, like emotional neglect, for example. May not have a single memory, but is built up continuously over the early years. So thank you so much for this, Matt. It's such an important topic. I actually call that kind of trauma hidden trauma. And the reason I call it hidden trauma is because it's not recognized as trauma for the most part. So you've mentioned Emotional neglect, and I would add another great example of this is the silent treatment, because that is even less recognized. So people think, the silent treatment it's not abuse and it's not traumatic because it's just your parents upset, so they're not talking to you. But if you look at the unconscious part of the brain, the parent not talking to me means danger. It means my life is in danger. So part of our survival instinct is that these people who are supposed to be protecting us are happy with and approve of us and love us, because otherwise they will reject us, we'll be kicked out of the tribe, and we'll die because we're not designed to survive on our own. So this is one of the hidden trauma is one of the areas that people underestimate. So, I've spoken to a lot of people who go, well, I've got these issues in my life that I want to sort out, but I had a great childhood. My childhood was fine. There was no abuse. I knew my parents loved me, so I don't know what it could be. And then you look at things like, what did your parents do when they were upset? How were you punished when you did something wrong? Were your parents physically affectionate? Did you feel safe? Did you feel loved and supported and respected? Those are all the qualities that lay the foundation for a healthy, happy, successful adult. So if there's any of those aspects missing, then that definitely does cause the trauma we're talking about, that hidden trauma, or that what Matt referred to as developmental trauma. So developmental trauma is about that word. It relates to the development of the brain. So in the early years, the physical development of the brain is impacted by those stress chemicals that cause trauma, traumatic. As they're produced in traumatic events. So there is that as well, but what we're talking about here is hidden trauma, which is apparently harmless things that contribute to those feelings of I'm going to die. So and that then impact, like as Matt says continuously over the years, they build and build. So if your parents got upset one time and didn't talk to you, or a couple of times, that's not going to, depending on what other references are there, that's not going to do it. But if that was their coping skill, or if let's say your parents are worried about money, that can cause hidden trauma, or they are stressed at work, or the death of, one of the death of a parent or a friend of your parents, the effect on your parents will impact you. So there's a lot of components that determine one person developing a trauma response and another not, but certainly those are things that that people overlook. If you've got obvious negative childhood experiences, memories of negative childhood experiences, change those. So change those first, and you may not need to change the rest. So I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. Well, if I've got to also address the silent treatment and this and that, change the obvious ones first, and then the rest may be okay. But if you're thinking, well, I don't know what it could be from my childhood, or I've changed all of those negative memories, then ask yourself those questions. How was I punished when I did something wrong? Bearing in mind the difference between the conscious and the unconscious parts of the brain, even though you may consciously understand why, and there was a good reason and all of that, the unconscious part of your brain cannot think that way. So that trauma may still have have been created there. So I hope that's helpful. And of course, let me know if any more is needed on that, or anything doesn't make sense. And so if you would like help, so I can either answer your questions like I did today, or if you would like help in person, you can come into the Zoom room and I can take you through changing memories or addressing certain issues, finding certain memories, that kind of thing, addressing resistance, anything like that. The link to sign up for that will be in the description of this post. And other than that, thank you so much to those who ask questions. We love getting your questions, and lots of love to all of you. See you next time. Bye-bye.